It was an ordinary Thursday morning when the phone call came. My daughter, Grace, had been feeling a little rundown for the past few weeks, but nothing alarming. I thought it was just stress, maybe too much on her plate with work and the kids. Grace was always juggling a million things, being a great mother to Emma and Jake, working part-time at the hospital, and still finding time to visit me every week. We were close, like best friends, and I always told her how proud I was of everything she managed to do. But that morning, everything came to a screeching halt. I had just finished making my tea when the phone rang. I saw the hospital's number flashing on the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. I answered, my voice light, expecting it to be some update on Grace's checkup. But it wasn't Grace's voice that came through the line. It was the doctor's, his tone somber and urgent. Mrs. Hayward, I'm terribly sorry, but there's been an incident. Your daughter suffered a heart attack this morning. It was sudden, and despite our best efforts, we couldn't save her. My body froze. The room seemed to spin, and I found myself sitting down on the couch as if my legs had lost all strength. What are you saying? I whispered, barely able to breathe. I'm so sorry, the doctor said again, his words slow, methodical. She didn't make it. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't process it. My Grace, the woman I had raised, the daughter who had always made me laugh, the mother who had loved her children with everything she had, was gone. The pain hit me like a tidal wave, and I felt my chest constrict with a grief I had never known. I remember staring at the phone in my hand, unable to move for what felt like hours. My world had just collapsed around me. My only child, my flesh and blood, gone. I don't even remember calling Tom, Grace's husband. He had been working from home, and I could barely bring myself to say the words to him. But I did. Tom, it's Grace. She's gone. His silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. I could hear him choking back a sob, and then there was a pause before he said, I'll be right there. I don't know how long I sat there after that. The phone call felt like it came from another life, a life I no longer recognized. I remember just staring at the empty room, trying to find something, anything, to ground me. But nothing made sense anymore. The funeral was held a few days later, and I tried to hold it together. But how could I? My daughter was in the ground, and I was forced to face the cruel reality that I would never see her smile, hear her laugh, or feel her warmth again. My grief was overwhelming, suffocating, and I struggled to breathe through the waves of emotion that kept crashing over me. Tom was there, of course. He was a wreck. He had loved Grace with everything he had, and it showed in his face, red, blotchy, his eyes puffy from crying. He kept to himself, but I could see the pain in his eyes. At least, I thought I could. After the service, I stayed at their house. The kids, Emma and Jake, were taking it hard, and I thought it might help to be there for them. I wanted to hold them, to comfort them, to remind them that they weren't alone in this world. I couldn't take away their pain, but I could be a presence for them, someone who loved them, someone who understood their grief. But the moment I walked in the door, I knew something was off. Tom was waiting for me, and when I saw his face, I realized that I hadn't been prepared for what was coming. There was a coldness in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Tom had always been warm, respectful, kind. But now, standing there in the entryway, he looked at me with a strange intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I need to talk to you, Mom, he said, his voice stiff, emotionless. He didn't even offer me a seat, just motioned toward the living room, where the sound of the kids playing in the background only made everything feel more surreal. I thought he was just upset, that this was grief talking, and so I followed him, my heart heavy with confusion. What is it, Tom? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Is it about the kids? About Grace? He nodded, but his face didn't soften. He was rigid, distant. I can't do this anymore. You need to leave. The words hit me like a slap in the face. What do you mean? Tom, I just lost my daughter, and now you're telling me to leave? His jaw clenched as he stared at me, the anger in his eyes now clear. This house is mine now. I need to focus on the kids. I can't have you here, making things more complicated. Complicated? I repeated, my voice rising. I'm your mother-in-law, Tom. I've been here for Grace, for you, for the kids. You think I'm making things complicated? You think that, after losing Grace, I shouldn't be allowed to stay here? With my grandchildren? Tom looked away, his hands balled into fists at his sides. It's not about that, he said, his voice quieter now, almost tired. I just need space. I need things to settle. The kids need me, and I can't have you here while I'm trying to figure things out. I shook my head, disbelief flooding my body. You can't do this, Tom. This is my family too. I should be with the kids. I'm all they have left of their mother. I'll let you see them when I'm ready, he said, his voice colder now, more final. But for now, you need to leave. And just like that, I was standing in the hallway, forced out of the house, my heart breaking. I could hear Emma and Jake calling for me from upstairs, but it didn't matter. Tom had already made up his mind, and there was nothing I could do to change it. He closed the door between us, and for the first time, I truly felt the weight of my loss. I walked away, unable to look back. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let Tom take my grandchildren from me. In Ohio, I realized that if I wanted to see my grandchildren again, I had to fight for them. No one else would. The drive from Tom's house felt endless. My hands were clenched tightly around the steering wheel, the only thing keeping me grounded as I tried to process what had just happened. My daughter was gone, and now, my son-in-law was taking my grandchildren from me too. My heart felt like it was in a vice, and every mile that passed, I could feel the pain getting sharper, more unbearable. I knew I couldn't let this stand. I was their grandmother, for heaven's sake. I had been there for every milestone in their lives. I had held them when they were born, watched them take their first steps, heard their first words. I had been a part of their world, and now, just like that, I was being shut out. As I drove to my small apartment, the reality of it hit me. I wasn't just grieving the loss of my daughter anymore. I was grieving the loss of my place in my grandchildren's lives. I thought of Emma and Jake, their innocent faces clouded with confusion and pain, not understanding why their grandmother was suddenly being taken away from them. I had to do something. The idea came to me in the quiet of my apartment, after the tears had finally stopped, after I had given myself a moment to breathe. I wasn't going to let Tom win. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let him tear apart my family. I loved those children, and they loved me. There had to be a way for me to stay in their lives. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Karen. She had helped me with legal matters in the past, and I trusted her. When she answered, I wasted no time. Karen, I need your help. Tom is trying to keep me from seeing my grandchildren. He's kicked me out of the house, and I need to do something about it. Karen paused for a moment before speaking, her voice soft but firm. I'm so sorry, Emma. That's just heartbreaking. But we can fight this. We can get you access to your grandchildren. The law is on your side. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but Karen's words gave me a spark of hope. Maybe there was a way to get back into their lives. Maybe there was a way to make sure Tom couldn't just erase me from their world. Over the next few days, I started gathering everything I could: photos, texts, anything that showed how involved I had been in my grandchildren's lives. I wanted proof that I wasn't just some distant relative, I was their family. I'd loved them from the moment they were born, and I would continue to love them, no matter what Tom did. The first step was to file for visitation rights. In Ohio, grandparents have a legal right to request visitation, especially if they have a strong relationship with the child and can show that their involvement is in the child's best interest. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Tom was already doing everything in his power to keep me away, and I could already imagine the battle ahead. But I had no choice. I filed the paperwork, and within weeks, I was summoned to court. The thought of seeing Tom again, of facing him in a courtroom, made my stomach churn. But I couldn't back down now. If I didn't stand up for my grandchildren, no one would. The court date finally arrived, and I walked into the cold, sterile courtroom with a sense of determination that surprised even me. I had spent days preparing, speaking with my lawyer, gathering evidence. But as I sat down, I couldn't help but think of Emma and Jake. They didn't deserve any of this. They deserved to know they were loved, to know their grandmother would always be there for them. Tom sat across from me, his face tense, his hands folded tightly in front of him. He didn't even look at me as I entered the room. His focus was on the lawyer beside him, a tall man with slicked back hair and a suit that looked a little too expensive for the occasion. He was already preparing to fight me, preparing to do whatever it took to keep my grandchildren from seeing me. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. We were instructed to present our cases, and I felt my heart race in my chest. I had no idea how this was going to play out. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't prepared for a long, drawn-out legal battle. But I was prepared to do whatever it took to show the court that I deserved to be a part of my grandchildren's lives. Tom's lawyer was the first to speak, arguing that I was a threat to the children's emotional well-being, that my presence in their lives would only confuse them, especially with everything that had happened with Grace's death. I wanted to scream at him, how dare he paint me as the villain? But I stayed calm, forcing myself to listen and focus. When it was my turn, I stood, my hands trembling but my voice steady. Your Honor, I am not here to disrupt their lives. I'm here because I love my grandchildren. I've been a part of their lives since they were born. I've watched them grow, I've held them when they were sad, and I've celebrated their victories. They deserve to know that they are not alone, that they still have family who loves them. I paused, looking at Tom, who was still not meeting my gaze. I'm not asking for full custody, Your Honor. I'm asking for the right to be a part of their lives. I want to see them, to continue to be the grandmother they know and love. I am not a stranger to them. I am family. The room was still. Even the judge seemed to hesitate, as though weighing my words. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in Tom's eyes. The judge's decision was made, but it was only the beginning of the real fight. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the judge deliberated. His gavel sat firmly in front of him, the weight of the decision about to be made pressing heavily on my chest. My lawyer, Karen, sat beside me, her face unreadable, but I could feel the tension radiating from her. She had been confident in our case, but I knew that the law, much as it was supposed to protect grandparents like me, was a complicated beast. Nothing was certain. Tom's lawyer had tried his best to make me look like the villain, the angry, grieving grandmother who was more interested in asserting control than in the well-being of my grandchildren. His arguments had been sharp, cutting deep, but I'd managed to keep my composure. I knew what I had to say, and I knew it was the truth. I wasn't here to take anything away from my grandchildren. I was here because I loved them, because I couldn't stand the thought of them growing up without the love and support of their grandmother. As the judge finally raised his head, his gaze sharp and direct, I felt a surge of anxiety. This was it. This was the moment that could either tear my heart apart or give me a chance to be with Emma and Jake again. I've reviewed all the evidence, the judge said, his voice firm but compassionate. This court recognizes that grandparents can play a vital role in the emotional and psychological well-being of a child, especially in situations where there has been a loss of a parent. Mrs. Hayward, I understand your desire to maintain a relationship with your grandchildren. However, I also must consider the wishes of the primary custodial parent, Mr. Bennett, and the potential impact on the children's current emotional state. My heart sank. I knew Tom had already made it clear that he didn't want me in their lives. He had refused to even let me see them. But still, I had hoped the judge would understand that the children needed me as much as I needed them. The judge continued, "Therefore, the court is ordering a temporary visitation arrangement. You will be granted visitation rights for 1 weekend every month, supervised, at least for the first 3 months. At the end of that period, we will reassess the situation based on the children's well-being and your continued relationship with them." I sat back in my chair, trying to process what the judge had just said. It wasn't a win. It wasn't even close to what I had hoped for. But it was something. A small step in the right direction, at least. I had the chance to see my grandchildren again, to start building a bridge to them. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Tom didn't even look at me as the judge's ruling was read aloud. He was already talking to his lawyer, likely making plans for how he could control the situation. I knew this wouldn't be easy. I knew he would try to make this as difficult as possible. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when I had fought this hard just to be in their lives again. As we stood to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Karen gave me a reassuring smile, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She knew this was only the beginning. I had been granted visitation, but it was far from the end of the battle. Tom would fight me at every turn. And I had no illusions about how much he could manipulate the situation. The courtroom doors closed behind us, and I stepped out into the bright daylight, the weight of the day hanging over me. I still couldn't understand how my family had fallen apart so quickly. How Tom, someone I had trusted, could turn against me so completely. But I wasn't going to dwell on that now. I had a battle to fight. For Emma and Jake. For my family. I couldn't wait to see them again. Even if it was only for a few hours, I would take it. I would prove to Tom, and to myself, that I was a grandmother worth fighting for. Tom's grip on my grandchildren tightened, and with every passing day, his manipulations grew more calculated. The days following the court's ruling felt like a constant tug-of-war. While I had been granted supervised visitation rights, I could feel Tom's resistance building with each new interaction. He had been forced to let me see my grandchildren, but he didn't make it easy. Every time I tried to arrange the visits, there was always some excuse, some reason why things couldn't go as planned. At first, I didn't think much of it. I told myself it was just him still grieving, still processing the loss of Grace. But as the weeks went on, I began to see a darker side of Tom, a side I hadn't recognized before. He started to subtly undermine my relationship with Emma and Jake, planting seeds of doubt in their young minds, making them feel uncomfortable whenever I was around. He wasn't outright forbidding them from seeing me, but the coldness, the distance he placed between us, spoke volumes. One weekend, after I had arranged for my visit, I showed up at Tom's house, heart pounding with excitement. I hadn't seen Emma and Jake in weeks, and the thought of holding them, hugging them, being with them again made everything feel worth it. But when I arrived, there was no one at the door. I knocked several times, growing more and more anxious with each unanswered knock. After a few minutes, Tom finally answered, but his expression was cold, distant. "Tom, where are the kids?" "I thought I was supposed to see them today," I said, my voice tight with frustration. He didn't even look at me. "I'm sorry, but they're not up for a visit today," he said, his voice curt. "They've been through a lot lately, and I don't think it's the right time." I could feel my chest tightening. "What do you mean?" "We've gone through this in court. You can't just cancel our visits because you don't think it's right," the judge said. "I know what the judge said," Tom cut me off, his voice rising. "But I'm the one raising these kids now. I'm the one who decides what's best for them, not you." His words stung more than I expected. "Tom, this isn't about you. This is about Emma and Jake. I have every right to be part of their lives." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Please, just let me see them. They need me. He took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not doing this today, Mom," he said, then slammed the door in my face. I stood there on the porch, staring at the closed door, feeling the weight of his rejection hit me harder than I ever could have anticipated. He wasn't just keeping my grandchildren from me, he was trying to erase me from their lives altogether. The anger bubbled up inside me, threatening to explode, but I knew I couldn't let it. Not in front of him. Not in front of the children, if they were inside. I walked away, my hands shaking with frustration, my heart heavy with the cruel reality of it all. That was the moment I realized that Tom wasn't just grieving, he was using his grief as a weapon. He was trying to control everything, and in doing so, he was pushing me further and further away from the children I loved so much. He had already taken my daughter. Now, he was trying to take everything I had left. I went home that day, defeated, but not broken. I had to find a way to keep fighting. I couldn't let him win. The next few weeks were filled with increasingly manipulative tactics from Tom. I tried to arrange the next visit, and every time, there was a new excuse. He would claim that the kids were sick, or they had other plans, or that they were too tired after school. Anything to keep me away. He even started to limit my contact with them, no more phone calls, no more messages. It was as if he was trying to erase me completely, to make me a stranger in my own family. I knew I had to take action. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was a fight for my family, for my place in my grandchildren's lives. And if Tom thought he could break me, he was wrong. I wasn't going to back down. I called Karen, my lawyer, again, and we began preparing for the next phase of the battle. Tom's behavior was clear. He wasn't just trying to limit my visits, he was trying to block me out entirely. I knew that the court would see that. "Karen, I need you to help me fight this. I need to show the court that he's not just grieving, he's actively trying to shut me out. This isn't about the kids anymore. This is about Tom's need to control everything." Karen's voice was calm and reassuring. "We'll take action, Emma. We'll make sure the court sees this for what it is. He can't just use his grief as an excuse to prevent you from seeing your grandchildren." The next step was to gather evidence, anything that could show Tom's manipulative tactics. I kept a record of every attempt I made to contact the kids, every time he had canceled a visit, every excuse he had given. It wasn't easy. The more I pushed, the more he fought back, but I knew this was the only way to get through to him. I also started reaching out to family and friends who had seen Tom's behavior firsthand. It was time to shine a light on what he was really doing, to expose the truth. I wasn't just fighting for my rights as a grandmother. I was fighting for my grandchildren's right to know that they were loved by more than just their father. They had a whole family who cared about them, and I wasn't about to let Tom take that away. Tom's manipulation reached new heights, and I realized that this wasn't just about custody, it was about control, and he would stop at nothing to get it. The more I pushed back, the more aggressive Tom became. It was as if each step I took to reclaim my rights only fueled his desire to block me further. He wasn't just trying to limit my relationship with Emma and Jake, he was actively trying to erase me from their lives entirely. And with every call I made to arrange a visit, every text I sent asking to speak to my grandchildren, he responded with cold rejection, his excuses growing more elaborate and unreasonable. One evening, after another failed attempt to contact them, I sat at my kitchen table, my head in my hands, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I had been fighting for months now, gathering evidence, consulting with my lawyer, but it felt like I was getting nowhere. Tom wasn't playing by the rules, and I was starting to feel the exhaustion of it all. Karen had advised me to stay patient. "The legal system doesn't move quickly, Emma," she had said, her voice calm but firm. "But we're building a strong case. We need to show that his actions are not in the best interest of the children. That's what will win us this case." But it was hard to hold on to hope when Tom's manipulations seemed to be working. He was painting me as an unstable presence in the kids' lives, claiming that my grief was overwhelming, that I wasn't capable of providing a stable environment for them. He had even gone as far as to speak to their teachers, their doctors, telling them that I was not fit to be around the children, that I was causing them distress. It was maddening. He had taken the memory of Grace, our shared grief, and turned it into ammunition to turn Emma and Jake against me. I knew I had to find a way to fight back harder. I couldn't let him win. The children needed to know that their grandmother loved them, that I would do anything to be there for them. I couldn't let Tom tear our family apart. That's when I decided to do something drastic. I called a family meeting. It had been months since I'd seen any of Tom's side of the family. They had all been silent during this entire ordeal. Some of them had reached out to offer their condolences when Grace died, but no one had stepped in to challenge Tom's treatment of me. I needed their help. If I was going to stand a chance in court, I needed to show that Tom's behavior wasn't just hurting me, it was hurting his children, too. I reached out to Tom's brother, Michael, and his wife, Laura. We had always been close, and I knew they saw the good in me. I didn't want to drag them into this fight, but I knew I had to. If I was going to stand a chance in court, I needed as much support as I could get. When Michael agreed to meet, I didn't waste any time. I arranged for us to meet at a local coffee shop, and I arrived early, my heart pounding with nerves. I had no idea how Tom's family would react. Would they side with him? Or would they finally see what he was doing? When Michael and Laura arrived, I could see the concern on their faces. They had heard about the court proceedings, of course, but I could tell they had no idea how far Tom had gone. "Emma, we've been hearing things, but we didn't know it was this bad," Laura said, her voice filled with sympathy. "We had no idea Tom was shutting you out like this." "I didn't want to involve you," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "But I can't do this alone. Tom's not just blocking me from seeing Emma and Jake. He's manipulating them. He's trying to erase me from their lives." Michael and Laura exchanged a glance, and then Michael nodded. "We've seen how he's been acting. But we didn't know how far he'd gone. This isn't right, Emma. You're their grandmother. You have every right to be in their lives." Tears filled my eyes as I looked at them. "I just want to see my grandkids. I don't want to take them from Tom. I just want to be there for them, to help them through this. I'm all they have left of Grace. They shouldn't be kept from me like this." "We'll do what we can," Michael said, his voice soft but resolute. "We'll talk to the rest of the family. If Tom's not going to see reason, we'll make sure the truth gets out." With their support, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. I had people on my side, people who could see Tom's actions for what they were. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but at least now, I had a chance. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of action. Michael and Laura spoke to other relatives, making sure that Tom's behavior was known within the family. It wasn't easy. Tom was still using his grief as an excuse for his actions, and many of his relatives were hesitant to get involved, not wanting to take sides. But the more people I spoke to, the more I began to understand just how deep Tom's manipulations went. He had isolated me, painted me as the villain, and made sure that no one would question his control over the children. He had even gone so far as to discredit me to the rest of the family, and I was only beginning to see how deeply ingrained his influence had become. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. As the next court date loomed closer, I knew the fight would only get harder. Tom wasn't going to let go without a fight. But I was ready for it. I had my family's support, and I had a new strength within me. I wouldn't stop until I had Emma and Jake back in my life. The courtroom was the stage for the final act, and I knew that this battle would either break me or give me the chance to reclaim my family. The day of the court hearing arrived with a weight in my chest. It felt like all the years of love, of memories, of shared moments with Emma and Jake had led to this point. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and everything I had fought for was going to be decided in this one room. I could hear the echo of my footsteps as I walked into the courthouse, each step more uncertain than the last. Would I be able to see my grandchildren again? Or would Tom's manipulations win out, keeping them from me forever? I tried to push the nerves aside. I had prepared for this moment, gathering evidence, speaking to family members, documenting everything Tom had done to shut me out. I had been patient, I had followed the legal steps, and now, all I could do was trust that the truth would come out. Karen, my lawyer, was already waiting for me when I arrived. She greeted me with a smile, though I could see the tension in her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" she asked gently. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what "ready" really meant anymore. How could I be ready when so much was on the line? How could I be calm when everything I loved, everything I had left after Grace's death, hung in the balance? We took our seats in the courtroom, and soon the judge entered. A tall man with graying hair and a serious expression, he called the court to order. As he did, I felt my stomach twist with anticipation. Tom was already there, sitting with his lawyer. His face was a mask of composure, but I knew it was just a facade. He was nervous too. This wasn't just about visitation rights. It was about power. It was about control. And as much as I had wanted to believe Tom was simply grieving, I knew now that he was using his grief as a tool to isolate me from the children, to strip away my place in their lives. The proceedings began, and the tension in the room was palpable. Tom's lawyer spoke first, arguing that I was unfit to have regular contact with Emma and Jake, citing my emotional instability and the strain of the recent family tragedy. He painted me as someone who couldn't handle the responsibility of seeing the children, implying that my grief was overwhelming and that my presence would only cause them further distress. It felt like a slap in the face. Every word from his mouth was a direct attack on my ability to love and care for my grandchildren. He twisted my grief into something that made me appear weak, unstable, like I was the one doing harm to the kids. But I wasn't about to let that narrative stand. When it was my turn, I stood up, my hands shaking, but I didn't let it show. I could feel the eyes of the court on me, and for the first time, I allowed myself to channel all the pain I had been feeling into something stronger, my resolve. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady, "I am here today because I love my grandchildren. I have always loved them. My grief is not something that should be used against me. Yes, I've lost my daughter, and it's a loss I'll never fully recover from. But I have been a constant presence in Emma and Jake's lives. I've been there for every first step, every first word, every birthday. I am not asking to take them away from their father, but I am asking for the right to continue being a part of their lives. I am their grandmother, and that relationship is just as important as the one they have with Tom." I paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Tom is using his grief to control everything. I understand that he is hurting. I understand that this loss has shaken him to his core. But that does not give him the right to erase me from the children's lives. My love for Emma and Jake is not conditional. I'm not here to cause them harm. I'm here because I want to help them heal, because I want them to know that they are loved, not just by their father, but by their extended family." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I spoke, but I didn't falter. I had to get the truth out. I had to make them see how Tom's actions were affecting not just me, but the children. They needed their grandmother. And they needed to know that they could count on me. When I finished speaking, there was silence. The judge was listening, but I didn't know what he was thinking. Tom didn't say a word. His eyes were locked on me, cold and unreadable. Then, Tom's lawyer stood up, and I knew he would do everything in his power to discredit me. "Your Honor, while Mrs. Hayward's intentions may be sincere, the reality is that her emotional state is unstable. She has not demonstrated the ability to provide a safe and stable environment for the children, especially in the wake of this tragedy. Her grief is clouding her judgment, and the children should not be subjected to it." The words stung, but I wasn't going to let them get to me. I had been through worse. I had lost my daughter. I had fought tooth and nail to be part of my grandchildren's lives. I would not let him strip away everything I had left. The judge, after hearing all the arguments, called for a brief recess. The air in the courtroom felt thick with anticipation. I could only guess what he was thinking, but I knew one thing for sure: this was going to be a long and difficult road. I wasn't going to win just because I spoke the truth. Tom wasn't going to give up without a fight. But I wasn't going anywhere. When the judge returned, he gave his preliminary ruling. I understand the pain both families are experiencing, and I see the strength of Mrs. Hayward's bond with her grandchildren. However, given the circumstances, I am ordering a temporary arrangement of supervised visitation for the next 3 months. This will allow the children to have contact with their grandmother, while also ensuring that they are not further traumatized by the loss of their mother. It wasn't the victory I had hoped for. It wasn't even close to what I had wanted. But it was something. And it was a start. I would see Emma and Jake again, at least for a little while. But I knew this was far from over. Tom wouldn't give up, and neither would I. Tom's manipulations reached a new low, and I began to realize just how far he would go to keep me from my grandchildren. The judge's ruling didn't bring the relief I had hoped for. Supervised visits were a small victory, but they were temporary, 3 months, and then who knew what would happen? It wasn't enough. I wanted more than just brief moments with Emma and Jake. I wanted to be there for them, to help them heal, to watch them grow, and to be the grandmother they deserved. But Tom was doing everything in his power to make sure that didn't happen. The visits started, but they weren't easy. Tom made it as difficult as possible. Every time I arrived, he was there, standing at the door, his face tight with anger. His lawyer's words echoed in my mind: "She's unstable. She can't be trusted." I had to wonder, was Tom actually buying into his own lies? Or was he using them as a convenient excuse to continue controlling everything? The supervised visits were held at a local community center, a neutral place where the caseworker could observe us. The first few times, it wasn't terrible. Emma and Jake were shy at first, unsure of why everything had changed. But with every visit, I could see them begin to relax. They were hesitant, but when they smiled and ran into my arms, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was getting through to them. But even during those precious moments, I could feel Tom's looming presence in the background. He never left. His eyes were always watching, making sure that I didn't get too close, that I didn't have too much influence over them. And then things took a darker turn. One afternoon, after one of my visits, I was leaving the community center when I saw Tom standing by his car, speaking to a man I didn't recognize. As I walked past them, I overheard part of their conversation. "He's been pushing her too hard," the stranger said in a low voice. "You need to keep her in line. Make sure the kids don't get attached to her again. It'll confuse them." I froze, my heart pounding. What did he mean by that? Who was this person, and what was Tom planning? I didn't have time to confront him then, but the following days were filled with a creeping sense of dread. Tom's behavior was escalating. He wasn't just trying to keep me from Emma and Jake, he was trying to manipulate them in ways I hadn't even imagined. It was during one of the visits, just a week later, that I saw it firsthand. I arrived at the community center to find Emma sitting in the corner, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, looking upset. Jake was standing beside her, his face drawn and serious. Neither of them looked happy to see me, which was unlike them. I felt my heart sink. "Hey, sweethearts," I said softly, walking over to them. "How are you doing?" Emma didn't look at me. Instead, she turned her head toward the ground, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad says you're causing trouble. He says we can't see you anymore." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" "No, sweetheart, that's not true. I'm not causing trouble. I love you, both of you. You know that, right?" Emma shook her head, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Dad says you're upsetting everyone. He says we can't see you unless you stop asking for visits." He says you're making everything worse. Jake's eyes filled with tears as well, and he took Emma's hand. I don't want you to go, Grandma. But Dad said, he said it's best if you don't come around anymore. I don't know what to do. I sat down beside them, my heart breaking. Don't listen to him, okay? I'm your grandma. I love you both more than anything. I'm not going anywhere. I'm always going to be here for you. But as I spoke those words, I saw the uncertainty in their eyes. I saw the confusion that Tom had planted in them, the doubt he had instilled in their young minds. He had done this. He had manipulated them into thinking that I wasn't someone they could trust. It was clear to me now that Tom wasn't just keeping me from seeing the kids, he was actively turning them against me. I tried to comfort them as best as I could during the visit, but it was harder than ever. Every time I reached out, I felt like I was losing them more and more. Every time I looked into their eyes, I saw the influence Tom had over them. They were torn between their love for their father and the affection they had always felt for me, their grandmother. And I could see the confusion eating away at them, making everything harder than it needed to be. The worst part was that I couldn't stop it. Tom had taken everything, my daughter, my home, and now, even my grandchildren's love. He had turned them against me without them even realizing it. The damage he was causing was insidious, like a poison spreading through my family. I left the community center that day with a feeling of helplessness that I hadn't experienced before. I didn't know how much longer I could keep fighting if Tom's hold on them was growing stronger every day. He was using every trick in the book, playing the role of the grieving father, the protective parent, the one who was looking out for the kids. But I knew what he was really doing. He was controlling them. He was isolating them from me, from the love and support they so desperately needed. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the phone in my hands, unsure of what to do next. I was exhausted. My heart ached for Emma and Jake, but I couldn't keep letting Tom pull the strings. I had to make a move. I had to do something before it was too late. I called Karen again. We need to act fast, I said, my voice thick with determination. I need more than supervised visits. I need more time with the kids. We can't let Tom continue to manipulate them like this. Karen was quiet for a moment before responding. I agree. We'll take it to court. We'll make sure the judge sees what's really happening here. We'll show that this isn't about what's best for the kids, it's about Tom's need to control everything. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew Tom wouldn't back down. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let him win. Not when I had so much left to fight for. The courtroom was our battleground, and I wasn't going to lose my family without a fight. The court date loomed like a storm on the horizon, and I could feel the tension in every fiber of my being. This was it, the final chapter of a battle I had fought since the day my daughter died. I had been through months of grief, rejection, manipulation, and endless heartache. But now, I was standing in the courtroom, ready to do whatever it took to reclaim my place in my grandchildren's lives. Tom had made it clear that he would not back down. He had played every card he could, painting me as unstable, turning Emma and Jake against me, and even using Grace's death to justify his actions. But I was no longer the grieving mother-in-law who didn't know how to fight back. I had learned from the best, my own pain. It had taught me how to stand strong, even when I didn't think I could take another step. It had shown me that the love I had for my grandchildren was worth every sacrifice, every tear. As I sat in the courtroom, my hands trembling but my heart steady, I knew I had to be more than just a grandmother. I had to be a force that could not be ignored. I had to show the judge and everyone in the room that Tom's control over my family was not just unfair, it was damaging. I was there to fight for Emma and Jake's right to know their grandmother, to fight for the love they deserved, and to fight for the truth. Tom's lawyer went first, as expected. The same arguments, the same manipulative tactics. He painted me as a woman consumed by grief, a grandmother who couldn't possibly offer stability to my grandchildren. He twisted my every word, making it seem like I was trying to take control of their lives, when all I wanted was to be a part of it. But when it was my turn to speak, I stood up with a quiet confidence. I had nothing to hide. My love for my grandchildren was pure. And I wasn't going to let anyone tear that away from me. Your Honor, I'm not here to take anything away from Tom, I began, my voice steady. I'm here because I love my grandchildren. I've been in their lives from the moment they were born. I've helped raise them, I've loved them, and I've watched them grow. And I will continue to be there for them, no matter what. I looked directly at Tom, who was sitting across from me, his jaw clenched tight. He wasn't looking at me now, but I knew he was listening. I could feel the weight of the room shift as I spoke. I understand that Tom is grieving, I continued. I'm grieving too. I lost my daughter, and in many ways, I feel like I've lost my family. But I will not stand by and watch as he uses that grief to push me out of my grandchildren's lives. Emma and Jake deserve to know they are loved by more than just their father. They deserve to know their family, and I will fight for them. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. I wasn't sure if it was the right moment, but I felt compelled to speak from the heart. I've watched my grandchildren grow. I've held them when they cried, I've cheered for them when they succeeded. I've been a part of their lives, and I have every right to continue being a part of their lives. I am their grandmother. I have never been a stranger to them. I will never stop fighting for them. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. The judge sat back in his chair, his gaze fixed on me. I couldn't read his expression, but I knew he was listening. This wasn't just about legalities anymore, it was about the truth, about what was best for the children. Tom's lawyer stood again, his voice cutting through the tension. Your Honor, we understand Mrs. Hayward's pain, but we ask that you consider the children's emotional well-being. Emma and Jake have already been through so much. To subject them to further disruption in their lives would only cause more harm. I felt a pang in my chest, but I didn't back down. I knew what I was fighting for. Your Honor, I said, my voice rising slightly, it is Tom who is causing the disruption, not me. He is keeping the children from their family, from their grandmother. I'm not here to make their lives harder. I'm here to make sure they know they have a family that loves them, even when things seem impossible. The judge looked at both of us for a long moment before speaking. I've considered everything. The evidence, the arguments, and the emotional impact on the children. It's clear that Mrs. Hayward has been an integral part of Emma and Jake's lives. The law recognizes that grandparents have the right to maintain relationships with their grandchildren, and in this case, I'm ordering that Mrs. Hayward's visitation rights be expanded. She will have access to her grandchildren every other weekend, unsupervised, starting immediately. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by the weight of what I had just been through. This was a victory, but the battle wasn't over. Tom would fight me, just as he had fought before. But now, I had a victory to stand on. Tom sat in stunned silence, his face twisted with rage. I knew this wasn't over for him. He would push back. He would make it difficult. But I had won something that couldn't be taken away. I had my grandchildren back. I had the right to be in their lives. I could be the grandmother they deserved. And I wouldn't let anything, or anyone, take that away from me again. As the judge banged his gavel and the court began to clear, I looked at Karen, who gave me a small but proud smile. You did it, Emma. You got what you deserved. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. I had fought for my family, and I had won. The road ahead would be difficult, but at least now, I knew I was on the right side of it. The end. Author's note. This story isn't just about legal battles or family drama. It's about resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. Emma fought for her family, not just her rights as a grandmother, but for her place in her grandchildren's hearts. The emotional toll of grief, combined with the manipulations of a loved one, can test anyone, but it's the strength to keep going that makes the difference. Family isn't just about blood, it's about the love and determination that holds you together, no matter what.